like to have a dating experiences when you have a chronic illness. Dating and building relationships with other people can be complicated. There are always unspoken expectations in those relationships, whether they are friends or people that you date. And navigating when it's appropriate to have the conversation with whoever you are allowing into your life is your personal journey and your personal decision. When I was dating, I had both sides of the fence. There were times where I was very upfront. Look, I have sickle cell. Do you know what that is? Usually they would be like, yes, I had a cousin, or I know somebody, and it's always somebody that died from it. I don't know why they tell you that. Or you have people who say no, but it doesn't matter. But it does. When I made the decision to share with my dating partners, I experienced several different reactions. Imagine going through a crisis and you're dating someone that you think may be the person that you want to settle down with. And they come to your hospital room and say, you're the perfect girl for me, but I can't do this. I don't want to be with anybody who might die. And then they leave you while you're still in the crisis in the hospital. It closes something up within you and makes it harder for you to continue on in future relationships with being as forthcoming. When I met my husband, I was at work. I worked for Ballet Total Fitness, and he was someone who came to play basketball and work out there, and he was fine. He still is fine. So I did not tell him right off the bat because he was at work. He was just a guy that I went to the gym with. And even after we had several dates, I wanted to make the decision to tell him. But by the time I had settled in my spirit that I was going to tell him, he found out because I was sick. How did that make you feel?
Well, I think there's some things you need to unravel and take a step back. I met Kimberly in my early 20s. She was living her best life. I was going through a couple of things, and I saw this beautiful young lady at the gym, but I still was kind of turned off to talking to anybody at this particular time. So on the basketball court, I think it's around the Halloween time, this young lady, beautiful young lady, had pigtails in her hair and was dressed in pajamas and proceeded to take the basketball off the basketball court while we're mid-play. Ken, you know that's a no-no, right? So the entire group, everyone else thought that was kind of cute. They're like, ha ha, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. We're gonna go ahead and let her do that. I'm like, no, player, no, this is not how this is gonna go down. And I'm like, what are you doing? Right? She said, well, I run the gym and I can stop. The girls got to take a picture. I'm like, y'all can take a picture after the game, right? So at that moment, I knew that she was going to be a very difficult young lady. But anyhow, at one particular juncture afterwards, shortly after, we decided to go on our first date. Had a lot of things in common, and from there we decided to go on multiple dates. I'm like, well, I'm feeling this young lady, and this is Mrs. Thomas, right? Now, keep in mind, in my earlier stages, I did not understand what sickle cell was. All I do know is that growing up, every person I had that was close to me, father figures, mother figures, all died. And when I learned that she had sickle cell, in my immaturity, in my ignorance, I decided that, you know what, I cannot afford to continue loving someone who I will eventually end up losing. So with that, I made the foolish decision that we can't really date anymore, even though we stayed in each other's lives. That's the craziest thing. She went one way, I went the other way, and somehow God brought us back together. And I apologize if I offend anyone, but I really believe that fate brought us back together. But it brought us back together with me having a clearer understanding that I am with the person, not the disease itself, and that this individual also has a level of abilities and and dreams and purposes that I can actually marry myself with. So interestingly, the relationship was more atypical than what she's used to and what I'm used to, because we had this I hate you, I love you. Well, it was more her hating me, not me hating her, because of my immature decisions. But nevertheless, though, somehow we always stayed friends. Even when she was dating other people, I used to laugh because she used to call me the devil. I was like, well, that's interesting considering that you're dating a lot of demons, right? So, so fast forward, she was going to A&T in North Carolina. I was here in Seattle, Washington, and we always talked about what it would be like if we got back together. So she made a stance because she's a woman who's very strong-willed. She said, well, if we ever date, we won't be doing long distance. So I left Seattle to went to North Carolina. And then from there, the rest is history. That's where we dated. That's where we got married. That's where we had our baby boy, my beautiful son, that doctors told us that we probably should terminate. That's for a different story later on. But nevertheless, here we are. In 2 weeks, it'll be 11 years. And I could not imagine my life without this woman next to my left side. So I'm just putting it out there. And this is not for kudo points because, I already done the things that a husband's supposed to do. At this time, there ain't no more brownie points. It's just, can I just get a cake and call it good? But go ahead, sweetie.
Okay, so like I said, I wasn't as forthcoming. When he did find out, he broke one of the dating rules. He came over to my house unannounced. And I praise God that he did, because he found me passed out in my shower. He took me to the hospital, called my mother. He knew where my mother worked, but he didn't know her. By the time I woke up and I asked my mother where he was, she was like, oh, you're not going to see him again, because he ran like the flash out of here. And that's when we had the conversation. I did not hate him, even though I said I did. I was hurt because I wanted him so bad. Everything was meshing together. And I felt like once again, my illness had caused me to be alone. And as anybody who has a chronic illness, there are times in your life where you are constantly in battle with self, where you feel like I am obligated to have this person in my life because they saw me sick and they stuck around, or I'm obligated to put up with whatever because I'm sick. I have this, like it's a tally point on your con list. Well, let me compensate by saying X, Y, and Z is okay. I had gone through the feeling like a burden part a lot of my life. I did that with friends, family members, people I dated. It was always, well, let me show you that I'm worth you being around when I feel good. So hopefully you'll remember I'm worth it when I don't. So by the time that we had the conversation, I came here for Christmas and we went out to dinner. By the time he brought up the conversation about us being together, I had already hardened myself to not be hurt anymore. Don't need you. I want you, but don't need you. He said, what would it be like if I dated just like he told you? I said, not long distance. He told me to pick a day. I picked a day. About a week before that day, he calls me and asks me to go to an address in Greensboro. I was like, what am I going to this address for? It was an apartment. because I also said, well, we can't live together.
Mhm.
He got an apartment, and on that day he came. He is the pure definition of if he wanted to, he would, because he wanted it and he did. And even though he was doing the work as far as keeping that promise, there was still a lot of work within myself that needed to be done. I hid pain crises from him to the best of my abilities. I would call him when I was already admitted, when everything was already okay. I would do things like go into the bathroom and turn the shower on and all of the faucets so he couldn't hear me crying. And then when he experienced my first uncontrollable crisis, we had a real conversation because the first words out of my mouth were, "You can go," because I was scared. And he didn't. Not only didn't he prayed for me, we prayed together. Um, he started researching what sickle cell was and how it affected the body. And so there were several waves that happened during that time, during that research period of, okay, I can handle this. Dang, wait, all of this can happen, where I thought he was leaving again, but he was doing the work to find out what he was getting into. And I had to remove my own filters and let him do that. Because besides me being the one with the chronic illness and him not being the one with the chronic illness, that's only one layer. That's one string in our relationship. Our faith had to match, our tenacity had to match, our communication had to match. He was not just my caretaker when I was sick, but he was my protector in all arenas, which I was not used to. So when he said that I was the one, and I remember the day distinctly, like he just out of the blue one day, he was just like, yeah, me and my fiance are, I was like, well, me? But he spoke it to reality because here we are. It wasn't until we got married, though, that we experienced some of our biggest battles. Because he is a protector, because he um, loves me so much and cares for me, he takes a very proactive role. But in the hospital, as you know, people that have sickle cell or anybody who has any kind of illness in the hospital, you know that battle is by yourself most of the time. Things are different when they see somebody else in the room. You are treated differently when someone else is there. So there were a lot of times where I was just like, no, don't say nothing, because I don't want them to be mad at me. I don't want them to treat me any kind of way. And that was very difficult for him. Um, when we got pregnant with our son, they wanted to do an amniocentesis, which is when they check out the baby while he's in utero, they stick a long needle through your stomach, through the uterus to the baby to take the sample. But it increases your chance of miscarriage. And I was always already a high risk pregnancy. So I said no. They asked us to do a genetic screening. We said yes. When we filled out the forms, unfortunately, just like a lot of people, I knew my complete family history, but my husband did not. Um, we had had prior conversations about knowing your hemoglobin status. Is there anybody in your family who has it? I talked to his mom. I talked to his dad. I talked to his mom and dad. He was tested when he was in the Marines, which is a very similar to what happened to my father. He was tested in the Marines. He went and got tested. We went back to get the results, and they said, you have hemoglobin AS, which means you have the sickle cell trait. Would you like to schedule the termination of of the baby now? This was 4 days after we found out we were having a boy. After I found out we were having a boy, he knew from conception it was a boy. That day could have broken us, because although I trusted him and I knew better, I knew that he didn't know. It felt like a case of bricks. And I wanted to scream and I wanted to cry. But I looked over at my husband, and the expression on his face, I knew that he was barely holding on. And so it was my turn to be strong. He looked at me. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to know how he felt. And he turned around and said, we won't be scheduling termination. We are people of faith, and we believe that God is going to see us through this. And we decided not to terminate. That day on the way home was probably one of the hardest days I think that we experienced together. Because he later found out, of course, you find out you have the sickle cell trait, you start calling everybody, like, wait a minute. He found out that he had an aunt who passed away from sickle cell. The mental battle for him was different than mine. My mental battle was, I have been an advocate, I have been a nationwide speaker all of my life. I knew better. I would never just not ask, or I don't know how we got here. He didn't lie to me. He told, he didn't know. I dealt with a lot of judgment from my doctor, and I was still pulling him back, because now the protection mode has gone from 10 to 100. No, don't say anything. No, it's okay. We just have to keep telling them that we're going to keep it. Then there was a day I was in the hospital, and my doctor snapped at me, and she said, how are you willing to risk your life for something that's not going to live anyway? My husband looked at me as I started to cry. My husband looked at me and he said, just tell me what you want me to do. And I said, I want you to fight for us. He took her into the hallway. She didn't come back, but he did. And he's been fighting for us ever since.
Well, I want to add something, because I appreciate it. Thank you. I think being a caregiver on the other side, see, my wife has lived with sickle cell all her life. I, being a caregiver, has not. I have never known anyone, at least I knew, to my knowledge. She said later on, I found out I had I actually passed away from sickle cell. Keep in mind, I didn't know my dad until I was 18 or 19 years old. So that family record on that side was completely gone until I became or in my 20s. And that's when we find out like, oh, wow, you know what? Later on in life, my dad still argues he doesn't have the trait, which is almost impossible not to have. But the question is this, knowing that your wife has sickle cell and I might have a trait, why didn't we terminate? That was a big question that we had to answer. Did I want my son or my child to go through what I went through? Absolutely not. But what it did said, there's a 50-50 chance that he will or he will not. And it was banking on that he will not, that we say, you know what, so we're going to do what we got to do. Now that he actually has SS, but he has never had a crisis, I made a commitment long ago when I became her husband and became his father, that as long as I'm breathing, that I will be the greatest advocate for them both. And with that came with me relinquishing a lot of my own anxieties, my own challenges, because there's a professional demand on me, then there's a personal demand. And both of them were highly intense. Trying to shift, okay, I gotta make money, take care of my family, I gotta make sure I have benefits, because you know what, the medicines, etc., expensive. However, on the other side, it's like, okay, you know, I'm working a job I really don't like, right? So it was always a constant internal struggle with what takes precedence. And I have committed that no matter what I have to do, I can make sure my wife and son was taken care of. So at that moment, we chose not to terminate. That was a decision I also made, that, you know what, Elder Thomas the first comes not necessarily last, but I become the foundation that ensures that they are always okay. And in the community, sad to say that a lot of individuals who have sickle cell or battle sickle cell don't have a strong support system. I've been in battles with doctors every time she's in a crisis. I think one of the biggest times I think I had, biggest battles I had, when your doctor called me a baby daddy. And I do my best to always stay professional. I always make sure I'm a cool, calm, collected. But let me tell you something, family. When she called me a baby daddy, knowing that she sees a ring on her finger and a ring on mine, and this gentleman is actually here with her, I felt highly disrespected. So again, I took another one of these medical professionals out in the hallway and proceeded to professionally let them know about my unhappiness with him. But nevertheless, do we have challenges? Absolutely. I think any relationship has challenges.
Everybody does.
One of the questions I was asked, and I'm going to say this as a man, why do you stay? That's a huge question. And I'm like, well, why would anyone stay with anyone, right? First and foremost, I don't see my wife as sickle cell, right? I see my wife living with sickle cell. And then I guarantee you, there's a large percentage of people who's always living with something. You just don't know about it. The difference is, I know about hers. There's so many people that have mental health issues that you may never know about. There's people who have type 2 diabetes you may never know about. You might not know about that later on into your relationship with them or into the marriage, but at least I made a decision knowing that I have to deal with this regardless of what it may be. And I made the commitments. And I want to make sure that I instill that into my son, that he is not allowed to quit on anything that he chosen to commit to. So I've made a decision to say, Lord, look, as long as you got me, I got them. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. So, you know, anything else you want to?
That is a huge factor. Like I said, this relationship takes a lot of faith. And there's the saying that says, if you love what you do, it never feels like work. That's a lie. That's a lie.
It's a lot of work over here.
It's a lot of work. He has huge responsibilities, and I would never take that from him. So what do I do? My biggest question is, what do I do to make sure that he's still taken care of as my husband when I'm sick? One of those things is I pour into him. I'm his biggest cheerleader. I let him know how much he's appreciated. I let him know that he's respected. I let him know that as long as he is led by God, I will follow you. I got you. And I think that's the biggest part of making sure both people are taken care of. He sees me as more than being sick. And I see him as more than just being my advocate. He still needs to be, I still need to be his caretaker, even if he's not sick, because I'm his wife, I'm his helpmeet. Even if I can't physically do the things that I wish that I could do, I make sure emotionally he is fed. Um,
You
and
know, it's interesting that you say that because one of the things I was just thinking about, there's this book called The Five Love Language, right? And if you ever read the book, the five love languages never just makes a distinction between somebody being healthy or unhealthy, a disease or no disease, right? It says this particular person with this background loves who needs this. Isn't it interesting that there's not a five love language for people with sickle cell? It's not a five love language for people who actually has mental disabilities. It doesn't say any of that. What I said it to say this: she's a person, and I still have the responsibility to know what her love language is, and dismiss that there's some times that she's not going to be able to exhibit the type of things that would make me feel, quote unquote, that would speak my love language, if that makes sense to you. There'll be moments when she might not be able to receive what I feel like she needs to have for her love language. But I said it to say this though, those things are cyclic, right? I now know that there are moments where I can tell when she's getting sick. There's moments I can identify just by certain things, how she behaved. I'm like, okay, do you have this ready? So the dynamics of our relationship has matured to a point where we're so in tuned where I feel a lot of people never get to that point. Now there's a lot.
let's quit early.
Let's be. I'm gonna all y'all in a relationship. I want y'all to raise your proverbial hands and know. Have you ever gotten an argument with your mate? Have they ever got on your nerves at all? Right? I don't care who it is. We still go to the exact same thing. I am not going to paint this picture like everything is roses. But I tell you this though, the braided cord, the father, my wife, and myself, right, and my son. He adds into it. He helps keep us together because he'd be the first one to say, "Look, you guys, you guys need to behave." When I heard my son say that to me, I'm like, "Look at God speaking through our child, right?" And we'll do a timeout. My son will put us in timeout. But also, let's talk about support real quick as I digress. I'd be remiss not to admit that we have people in our corner that makes it helpful. I have my sisters, I have my brothers, she has her best friend, she have people. And if I can encourage anybody who is dating with anyone with any type of invisible illness or critical illness, is that identify who your support is going to be as after you truly make the commitment that, yeah, this is the person I want to be with, right? Because you're going to get a lot of individuals that will try to challenge you to not move forward with your decision. Thankfully, my family just trusts me where I do, right? They just said, my sister, she's on this call right now. She can't talk me out of anything anyway. So it's just her best bet to support me no matter what, and vice versa. But when we look at the dynamics of our marriage now, people ask us, well, what keeps you guys together? I said, well, everyone goes to, they go to is love. Well, love, yeah, I think love is used so loosely to a point where like, yeah, because love has so many definitions tied to it. So I would say love, then I put and, right? Is love and my desire to be here. If you don't have desire to stay where you are, love doesn't matter that much, right? Because you can love someone from afar. You can love someone conditionally. I love you as long as if, right? As long as you're healthy, I'm gonna love you. But the moment you get sick, I'm sorry, but I cannot be with you at this particular time. And I went through that. I'm gonna just use myself as an example. I knew she was a woman I wanted when I saw her at the gym, even though she drove me absolutely crazy. But the pivotal point was when I found out she had sickle cell, and my limited knowledge of sickle cell is because the only thing I heard was that people who have sickle cell die, right? That was it. And I got tired of the momentum of losing people in my life to the point where I actually had attachment issues. Like, nope, I'd rather get rid of you before you try to get rid of me. You know what I mean? That's just how I operated. It doesn't matter, friend, foe, or whomever. But through
And we both have that. We both have that. I would.
you like running.
I used to be a runner. I'm not a runner anymore. But
that's not because I caught you.
You did.
You're not that fast anymore.
We were both runners. Like I would rather, instead of meeting you when or saying that I need you, I would rather just push you away. If I think you can't handle it, I'm out. That was before. I think another big lesson is you have to have multiple strings that hold the relationship together. Love is one, yes. I love him as my husband. He loves me as his wife. The mother of his son, the father of his son, but he's also my best friend. He's also my biggest comedian. He's also my diary. I've trusted him with the deepest parts of me. And I think that is the part that a lot of people quit early on. He was the first man who was strong enough that I felt okay being weak because I knew he had me that second go round.
That's cool. That's fair. The second go round. That's fair. but I said, it's great though. But look, let's keep it 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are paths that God actually take each individual down to mature those individuals. Period. Yes. Because you could ask for something and get it too soon and destroy it.
Yes.
And if you're not properly prepared for what the responsibilities is for you getting your blessing, you will mess it up, and then you want to blame God for why you put me in the situation. Yeah. So I am thankful, and even though it hurt like hell that we had to split up, we came back at the right time then, yes. Right? So you had to go do what you need to do, develop who you are, and actually heal yourself. And I had to release a lot of my past. I had to let go of all of the challenges that led up to where I was because I did not know who Eller Thomason was. Due to the responsibilities I had as a young child, taking care of my brothers and sisters, overcoming abuse. Like I had this nucleus of situations that thankfully you didn't tie yourself to in my 20s, if you want to be honest with you. So thank God that God broke it away sooner rather than later than us being actually on the front page somewhere, right? Or are you in the episode of Snaps? I don't know. But
we also grew up very differently. So our realities were very different. Which still plays a part even to this day. Our family dynamics were just different. So when we got married, we had some very ugly conversations on how we were going to run our marriage. What was the deal breakers for us independently and together? And that is held. A lot of our relationships outside of our marriage changed due to our marriage. He has been the patriarch all of his life. And now he has a wife and a son. Those relationships change. I depended solely on my father because he was the one who was always there. I've never not had a day that my father hasn't called me. He brought it up in premarital counseling. You got to let that go. If I'm going to be...
Is that how I said? Is that how I said that?
You said, you're going to have to let your dad go. And every hair on the back of my neck and my eyebrows was touching because I was like, are you serious? But what he meant was, I need you to trust me first. Before you call on him, call on me. Depend on me. Let me show you that I can be there. And he did. And he still does.
Ken, you know I'm laughing, right, Ken? I'm actually, because Kim's like, I know he didn't just tell you dismiss your daddy.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
When we started thinking about support system, I remember her meeting her father, right? I guess her father didn't like any of her former men, which understandably so. But I guess I was one of the one person that's unanimously all your brothers and your dad liked. I don't know why, because I heard horror stories, but I just know this. I always ask to be a great man, family. I always ask, like, Lord, I don't want to be a certain person I used to be. I did not know that He would grow me through my marriage. That's what's crazy. That I will tell you this: I prayed more and on my knees more, being a father and a husband than I ever have done when I was in the Marine Corps or anything else, or my worst experience ever. And because of that, I look at things differently. I asked God one time. I said, Lord, let me see my wife through your eyes. Who do you know actually asked that question? You know, as a young 20-year-old, I sure know. I was like, look, I don't care how you look at him. I'm gonna tell you how I'm looking at him. You know what I'm saying? 36, 24, 36. Yo, that's how I see him, right? But I'm glad that God has put me in a situation where I see her spiritually, emotionally, and her purpose-driven motive that continues to keep me attractive to her. As we're aging, the more she is talking about purpose, the more she's talking about advocacy, it actually builds something in me like, yes, I want to support you 100%. Go do what you need to go save these people. Because the only thing we have at the end of this world is that dash on our tombstone. And what is that going to mean for any of us? And I'm praying that for us and for her specifically is the lives that we help change, whether through marital counseling or through her being in advocacy, and my son being the legacy that he is, helping to transform what does it look like and change the narrative of what was before when it came to sickle cell. So
with all that said, let's give you the bottom line, a couple of rules that we live by in our relationship. Fighting in the hospital, we don't. But there is grace and there is space for us to express our frustration both ways. If he is frustrated with something, it is unfair for me to say, you can only have conversations with me when I feel well. That's unfair. And that is a lacking for him because he feels like he has to bottle it up and just swallow it. It's okay. Our conversations have grown to the part of we don't have to fight each other. We're on the same side. We're on the same team. We have already made a decision that matter not. Tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I'm still gonna be Mrs. Thomas. You're still gonna be my husband. So instead of fighting each other, we fight the issue. Do feelings get hurt? Absolutely. Do we still lose our cool? Sometimes. But you have to have standards and rules in place, especially when you are dealing with an illness, to sometimes you won't be at your mental best. Does that make sense? Does that make, somebody tell me something? Does that make sense?
You want to start opening the
Yes.
floor to
Yes,
questions?
it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm so interested to hear what questions they had because I know
okay, well,
we're short of time. There's any
does anybody have any questions? Not just about dating or marriage or through sickle cell, but just period on parenting someone with a chronic illness or any of the other topics that we've had to tackle.
This is Erica. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, I want to say you guys are dope and I love you guys. And I thank you for allowing us just a seat to be able to peek in to your relationship. My question to you is, as parents, how do you all balance responsibility when Kim is in crisis and she obviously can't physically be present with your son?
That's a very good question, Erica. There's a couple of things, right? One, I turned to super dad to super dad and super husband to super husband. If you honestly, I've gotten at first it was really difficult because Ellard is one of those kids that he love his mommy there, and when she's sick, it's now become a household management, child emotions management, and then ensure my wife get the treatment that she needs, right? So being a father, she would do her best to first off talk to him about what's going on with her to help ease his emotions. Secondly, I'm always reconfirming what she's stating to him and to let him know that it's gonna be okay. But when we start looking at school when she's hospitalized for multiple days, we utilize technology when he can't be there physically because, as you guys know, you can't. A little bit kids under the age of 18, I think at this time can't be in the hospital, but making sure that he gets a chance to speak to her, and then he and I are praying for her, and he and I are having conversations. So all the daily activities, I assume all those while managing his emotions, like, baby, mommy's gonna be okay. She loves you, etc., and reaffirming that she's gonna be okay. Because one of the things, my son's very sensitive to when things are wrong with his mama. I mean, goodness, he comes like truly is a little bear cub, and he will lose it. We realized early that we had to start those conversations with him, and then also rely on our support system that to help him change his focus. Let's say, for example, he might go to Godmama's house, Erica, or he might talk to Godmama. You might talk to Auntie Nika. He might do a lot of these things to help shift his focus. And then oftentimes it's just me spending time with him and keep him engaged on something else because he is on an autistic spectrum, and so he thinks differently, right? And I've learned to keep his focus on one thing so it doesn't shift to where's mommy, is mommy okay, etc., until it's time to go to bed. So does that answer your question, Erica?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Marriage isn't always 50-50, and that's just the reality of having a marriage, period. It's not always 50-50. There are some times where I'm not able to do my 50. I'm not able to give my 100. And he has to carry it. And that's not an easy job to do. And there are times where I have to carry it. Even though I may have a chronic illness, it doesn't stop him from going through life. And sometimes life will kick your tail. And that's when you come in as your helpmeet. I will hold it until you can take it back. I will hold it until you can hold it with me. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I was told so one of the things that helps me get through the just to add on to what I was saying earlier, I have two phenomenal mentors. I have two phenomenal mentors which help me stay in the game because I'm gonna be honest with you, there's moments where I am spiritually, emotionally, and physically exhausted. Because the level of intensity and care that's required to run the Thomas household. And I would be lying to say, has the enemy ever put the thought in my head quitting in it? So yes. Have I ever exercised that? Obviously not, and I absolutely refuse to. So what I want people to remember that we're still people, right? We still have moments where the enemy try to throw anxiety and depression at us, and thankfully we know how to combat that.
Yes.
We know not to be ignorant of his devices. So when that starts creeping in your spirit, like, okay, look, who I'm going to talk to? I'm going to talk to my spiritual father who's been married for 30 plus years, et cetera, to keep you back in the game, right? It's kind of like being in a boxing match. You see somebody actually getting their butt whooped, they go to the corner after the round, like, all right, look, now they jabbing your ribs, you get punched in your head. When are you gonna put your blocks up and when you gonna punch back? And that's what my mentors do. And I fight back, and we fight back with prayer. We fight back with meditation. We fight back with our purpose, understanding that this is larger than just the Thomas household, but it's also what we demonstrate right now. It could be an outline and a guidepost for someone else who's struggling with the very same thing, who may not have resources or access to people who has already been there and done that, if that makes sense.
Thank you guys for listening to us and a small part of our testimony. I hope that you took with it a sense of hope and a sense of understanding on what it's like to date and be married and be parents when a chronic illness is in the dynamics. I appreciate all of you guys' time.